5 years ago, a group of 7 people, human rights activists, humanitarian workers, journalists, and academics, established an NGO in Ankara. They named it the Research Center on Asylum and Migration, or İGAM.
We created İGAM as a think tank organization. We wanted to fill a gap. We wanted to make research, produce policy papers, but gradually we turned out to be a more and more operational organization. Our choir, a youth choir for polyphonic music, shows this tendency and this inclination.
As a totally independent, small NGO, İGAM's objective was to advance the rights of refugees and irregular migrants in Turkey and elsewhere in the world. It is a humanitarian and non-political organization. Today, it has 70 members, 23 staff, and 6 volunteers. Ambassador Talat Miras and Angela Burdett-Kut. At our 5th anniversary, we're planning to name our 2 multi-purpose halls in memory of 2 luminaries who are unfortunately less known by the current generation. Burdett-Kut lived between 1814 and 1906, and she is one of the most renowned and pioneering philanthropists in history. Made a baroness in 1871 by Queen Victoria for her charitable work, Angela was the first woman to have been made a peer in recognition of her accomplishments and was widely known as the Queen of the Poor. Talat Miras is the first permanent representative of Turkey at the UN office in Geneva. He was one of the body's 2 vice presidents, along with Mr. A. Herment of Belgium, at the United Nations Conference of Plenipotentiaries on the status of refugees and stateless persons. İGAM started 2 years after the beginning of the influx of refugees from Syria in 2011. Over 7 years, Turkey has become the country hosting the largest refugee population in the world, with 4 million Syrian and non-Syrian uprooted persons. This is a huge challenge for a country that does not have any experience of integration, nor the legal framework for integration at all. The problems are enormous. Refugees have difficulties accessing labor markets, quality education, proper housing, or access to language courses and other services. Today, public institutions and international and regional organizations are trying hard to address these questions with the financial and technical support of the international community. İGAM is also a part of these efforts, seeking to touch the lives of refugees and to make valuable, lasting changes. İGAM is glad to have its efforts gaining international recognition. Very recently, İGAM has been announced by the Malala Fund as the Gülmakai Education Champions. This means that İGAM will be able to focus on helping young refugee girls and boys access quality education in Turkey. It will be part of the Malala Fund's global No Lost Generation campaign. The Gülmakai Network offers a unique set of tools, training, and networks that will help advance education for girls in the Champions community and country. Through this initiative, the best practices will be shared, and visibility and influence on girls' education will be increased. Yet more international recognition came from the NGO Committee on Migration under the Economic and Social Council of the UN, which chose İGAM as one of 8 organizations representing best practices countering xenophobia and discrimination against refugees and migrants in 2018. İGAM was invited to deliver a speech and present its video on May 18, 2018, which is available at www.webtv.un.org, titled Countering Xenophobia and Discrimination. More recently, İGAM has been accredited to UNHCR's Global Consultations Meeting to be held in Geneva on the 27th to the 28th of June 2018. İGAM, as the president of the Turkish Refugee Council, initiated with its international partners the International Refugee Congress of 2018 in Istanbul, with the participation of 160 delegations representing 70 NGOs from 27 top refugee hosting countries. This Congress aimed at making the voices of the civil societies of host countries heard as well as refugees, by contributing to the Global Compact on Refugees, which will be presented to world leaders at the UN General Assembly meeting in September 2018 for their signature. The Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs and UNHCR will host an event on June 11th, just before the official consultations, a side event in Geneva to share the conclusions of the Congress. How then has İGAM grown from a very small local NGO to one of international significance and recognition? The size of the refugee protection crisis and increasing problems in host countries provides an environment for the development of civil society institutions. İGAM's experience is not an exemption. The following story demonstrates how an NGO could flourish from a small organization to a widely functional one, while keeping its independence and limited local character. The availability of international funds, neutrality, and expertise in the field, we believe, are the factors to be accounted for in our odyssey. İGAM started with small research and continues to conduct research. In 2015 and 2016, at the time of the irregular movement of large numbers of Syrian and Afghan refugees from Turkey to Greece, İGAM was hosting a regular informal dialogue between NGOs, INGOs, and international organizations on the one hand, and the government on the other. These monthly meetings were stopped when the government abolished the position of the Deputy Prime Minister in charge of Syrian refugees. As it became more obvious that the voluntary return of Syrian refugees to their countries in the short term was going to be impossible, İGAM focused more on integration issues. Together with the Belgium-based Migration Policy Group, İGAM initiated the Refugee Integration Tool, developed for East European members of the EU. This project was funded by the European Union through CFCU. Believing that a strong network among civil society organizations is crucial, İGAM initiated the establishment of the Turkish Refugee Council, which now has 26 NGO members, including the ones established by refugees. It was funded by the Open Society. While the large numbers of refugees increases social tensions among the host community and refugees, and the media plays a crucial role to contain such tensions, disinformation and hate speech, İGAM secured EIHDR funds from the EU delegations and is implementing a comprehensive media training project. Another project to help integration has been implemented by İGAM and its international partners from Greece, Italy, Slovenia, and Lithuania. This is a mobile phone application to help refugees to find service providers. In January 2018, İGAM and the international consortium, led by German municipality of Offenbach, was granted a large fund for a project called RIAC, the Refugee Integration Accelerators Project. With this fast-track integration into the labor market for third refugees, İGAM became one of a few Turkish NGOs which is able to access the European Commission's EASI funds. Very recently, İGAM is to start ECHO-funded project for case management through an information center in Ankara. As this brief review shows, civil society organizations can play an important and crucial role for refugee protection and integration. İGAM, as a small grassroots organization, sets a model that with neutrality and principled action, NGOs can contribute to the solutions needed for refugees and host communities, as long as they keep dialogue with all stakeholders open. İGAM thanks governments, donors, civil society organizations, academics, and all other stakeholders for their support and dedicated work for refugees.